Hi everyone, this is Nathan from Snap and welcome to another of our Snap XMP webinars. Today we're going to be focusing on Snap XMP Online and we're going to be looking at the analysis available to you. This is the third and final of the latest set of Snap XMP Online webinars. In the first one we did the boring bit, which was typing up the basic questionnaire. In the second webinar, we looked to refine the questionnaire, making the survey more dynamic and interactive in terms of content, using routing and masking, amongst other functionality to do that. And then today's webinar, we're going to be looking at the data collected using the provided summary reports, along with creating your own tables, charts, lists and clouds. A few key benefits to doing your analysis in Snap Online. Your data is available in real time, so whether you're looking at one of our pre-built summary reports or a previously created table or chart, or you just need to create a quick table on the fly, you're always going to be looking at the very latest data. I should add, you can of course filter your data to look at a particular period in time. With it being an online system, your data can be accessed from anywhere. So whether you're at your desk, traveling between offices or sat on the beach on holiday, if you've got a device and you can get connected, you can get analysing. And then for some of you, one of the big advantages is that you can share your data with colleagues, clients and stakeholders, giving them free access to exactly the same data that you're looking at. This can be restricted to looking at a set of predefined analysis, or you may wish them to give them the ability to create their own tables and charts and also perhaps download the data. The key point though is that whenever you are or whenever they like, they can look at running those reports or building those tables and charts without having to come through to you each week or month to run those weekly reports. So in short, access your data whenever and wherever you are and take the stress out of providing those regular updated reports to your peers. Okay, let's head into the software to make a start. So I'm going to log into my account and I'm going to be making use of the UK server today and just using one of my sort of dummy accounts. And I'm going to be making use of the webinars folder. And I've got a survey in here which has got 160 responses. And I'm going to take you through the survey, but I should just sort of add that I appreciate the survey I'm going to show you. Some of the questions are perhaps a little bit sort of shoehorned in just to give me sort of a few examples that I can show you rather than having to sort of jump in and out of lots of different surveys. So I'll just quickly fly through the survey. You can see we've got a mixture of sort of single choice questions and sort of some sort of drag and drop sort of satisfaction type questions, rating things importance, satisfaction, etc. Some statements, general comment questions. Got some sort of ranking questions, sort of put these in orders of sort of first, second and sort of third. So basically a little bit of everything. There's also some quantity response questions here where we're putting numerical values, sort of yearly budgets. And we've also got a number of sort of multiple response questions as well. And then right at the bottom, we've got a demographic section, which we'll be making use of as well. So a little bit of everything. But if we head back into the survey, we're going to start off by making use of the reports which are provided by Snap with each and every survey. So if I go to the Analyze tab, so there's 4 reports built into your survey by default. They're actually built into the template. So if you have your own template, the reports will depend on what's built into your own templates, but certainly the templates that are provided by Snap will provide these 4 reports. We'll start off by looking at the questionnaire report. Essentially, this is just a copy of your paper survey. So even if you don't think there's a paper copy version running in the background, there will be. And so it's maybe laid out a little bit differently than the online version. But next to each of the tick box questions, you can see we've got the actual data, including the sort of percentages as well. So just a really quick overview of your entire survey. We will be looking at how we can sort of put filters on these reports to look at different subsets of respondents, but I'm going to wait and do that on some of the other reports. So I'm going to go straight to the summary report. We've actually got 3 different summary ones. Essentially, these will give you a table or chart for each of your tick box questions, a list for any of your comment questions, and a mini statistics table for any quantity response questions. But we'll start off with the summary report. Jump to the top. As you can see, it starts off with an introduction saying sort of when the report was run and how many people are in this particular report. We then have a bar chart for each of our tick box questions. Now, these are actually for any single choice or multiple response questions. So as you saw a moment ago when we did the preview, I've got some sort of map control sliders, there's some sort of drag and drop and carousel style questions in there. Ultimately, in the background, they are tick box questions, so that's how these are being displayed. Scroll down a little bit, we will eventually get to some of our comment questions. So I've got my question number 9, this is my general comment question, so we have a list. And then towards the bottom, if I scroll down a bit more, we have some quantity response questions, so we've got a number of sort of mini statistics tables. Now, this report is essentially just a PDF, so we can sort of download it or print it straight from here, after perhaps a PDF or straight to your printer. If, on the other hand, we look at the summary dashboard report, we get exactly the same data with the same kinds of charts. It's just a slightly different layout, slightly sort of perhaps a little bit easier to read, a bit more like a dashboard, where rather than it being a PDF, each of the charts are in their own sort of defined area, which has got a number of benefits. One being that you can just right click on one of those charts and copy it or save it as a picture. But also when we come down to the comment questions, the lists, again, they're contained in their own sort of area. So rather than having sort of pages and pages of your PDF with all your comments, we've got that contained in this smaller area. Just a bit nicer. Now, moving on to the summary tables. We've got, again, exactly the same data, but this time in table format. So again, each of the tick box questions doesn't deal with the comment ones this time. It's literally just tables for your single and multiple response questions, but again, all the data on the one page for you. Now, before we start looking at adding sort of filters to these reports, I'll just go back to the summary dashboard one. I should add that it's worth noting that if you have got access to Snap XMP desktop, you can edit these reports in terms of the introduction, adding your own sort of company branding, perhaps removing certain questions, maybe even adding some of your own tables and charts into this report. And then once those are edited in the desktop software, they will be instantly available in Snap XMP online. Today, though, we're going to have a look at filtering the options in these reports. We'll have a quick look at doing them in these reports, but then we'll spend a bit more time filtering our actual tables and charts. So at the moment, we're looking at the data for all 160 people. Down the bottom, we've got filters and context. And I'm just going to add a nice simple filter of looking at the data for a particular trainer. I've got the filter spanner. And we can just pop a filter in, that's question number 2. And I could say question 2 equals 2, so that will be trainer number 2 in my list. And I click OK. And update. You'll now see that all the data for all the other trainers has disappeared. But just to confirm, they haven't just disappeared from that trainer question, they disappeared from the entire survey. So looking at the results for a particular question, this is the results for the people who attended Alex's training course. Now, I obviously know this survey quite well, so I sort of instantly know which questions to search for. It's worth pointing out that you've got the variables window. This will give you a list of all the different questions in your survey. See what all the different questions are. And if I go back to my filters, let's go back into that one. We have got some examples of different types of filters, different expressions, but I will be pointing you off to a webinar we did not long ago, which sort of spends quite a lot of time going through all these different expressions and how you might sort of use those different sort of syntaxes. Okay, I'm going to move on from the standard reports now, and we're going to look to start creating our own tables and charts. So if I click on the tables and charts icon, and we can create some new analysis. And for those of you that are perhaps already familiar with Snap XMP desktop in terms of analysis, this is a very similar process. We've got the analysis and the break, which is where we input the questions that we're interested in analysing. There's also a more, which then sort of introduces all the additional options you can make use of. Now, we're going to keep it nice and simple today to begin with, at least. I'm going to pop in question number 12, which is how often do you participate in classroom training? I'll leave everything else as it is by default and just click apply. So nice simple table. So of the 157 people who replied to this question, 47 participate on a monthly basis, and 18 people said it was their first time. What we might want to do though is go into modify and perhaps introduce a second question. So I'm going to break this down by my gender question, question number 21. Again, we'll leave it as it is, everything else. And this is what we would call a cross tabulation table or cross tab table. You may well know it more as a sort of a pivot table. So we've got the question 12 on the left on producing rows of data, and then we've got columns of data for the gender question at the top. Now, you will notice that in my example, I've actually got no data for this column here. So one thing you might consider is if I go back into modify, there's the option to remove any columns or rows of data where there is no data. So if I remove any sort of empty rows and columns and apply, that will remove the column which had no data. And also because that column happened to have quite a very big long label, actually it's made the table easier to read as well. But just to confirm, if this is a live survey and we were to click on this table tomorrow and perhaps someone has filled in a category which for one of those empty columns, that column would reappear then. So just to confirm, the analysis is my rows of data and the break is my columns of data. So yeah, this is question 12 and this was question 21. So I modify, you can see the analysis and break. So it's really just columns and rows. Okay. And that becomes a bit more obvious when we start introducing percentages. Just to make life more exciting, we've got 3 to choose from: analysis, break and base. But again, it just comes back down to, are we talking about columns of data or are we talking about rows of data? So if I talk about analysis, so we're talking about rows, apply that one. So each of my rows of data will now add up to 100%. So of the 28 people who participate on a monthly basis, 7% are male, 21% said they prefer not to say. Of the 11 people who said it was their first class, that's the breakdown. So each row adds up to 100%, as opposed to if I choose break percents, break means down, break down. So of the 10 males, this is how often they attend training. So it's columns of data. The third option there was base. That basically means everybody or total. So now the entire table will add up to 100%. Okay, or at least the middle section will add up to 100%. Okay, so it's a percentage of everybody. Now we could introduce a third question. Actually, I'm going to go back to break percents, and we could say with. So question 21 was the gender question. Question 20 is then the age question. So gender with age. So with will effectively sellotape a second table to the first table. I've got my original gender question broken down by how often people attend, and then completely unrelated, just happens to be stuck down the middle or stuck to it. We've got the same question, but this time broken down by the age. So With just basically allows you to create one bigger table of data. But what we might want to know is, of those 13 35 to 44-year-olds, how many of those are men, how many of those are women, etc. Or of those 3 females, what's the different breakdown for the different age groups? So I modify that one again. So instead of with, we can also use the word per, and per will basically merge those two, all the categories in question 21 and question 20 together. Now, just from a sort of visual point of view, at the moment, our main categories at the top are the age broken down by the different genders. It would probably actually read a little bit easier if we just reverse it around. So I'm going to say question 20 per question 21. So now the main categories are the genders broken down by the different age groups as well. Now, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and save this table. So we can give it a name. We might name it sort of AN1 for perhaps analysis number 1 or analysis number 2. Personally, I would try and give it a bit more of a sensible name. So I'm going to call it T for table and 12, TQ12. So I know that when I'm looking at it on the side, without even opening it, I know that that's a table based on question number 12. Okay, let's turn our attention to a grid question. So a sort of typically like a satisfaction type question. I'm going to look at question 5A to question 5D. Again, I'll leave everything else as it is by default and just click apply. This will lay it out very much like the original questionnaire. So what did we think on a scale of 1 to 5 about the ease of finding the required information, about the overall booking experience, etc. Again, we could pop some percentages on there. You can see it's nice and easy to sort of chop and change what you're looking at. So again, I'm talking about my rows of data. We might want to start filtering some data. So if I modify that one, we did a little bit of filtering earlier. So I could say perhaps take the age question and perhaps look at maybe one of the first 3 age groups, or perhaps going back to our trainer question, which was question number 2, I could say give me the results just for number 2 again, just for Alex. So we've got less data then. Okay, not going to worry about saving this one, so I'm just going to go and create a new one. Let's have a quick look at maybe some quantity response questions. So today I've got question 13, which is what's your yearly spend or yearly budget for sort of training courses, and also how many courses did you attend this month and how many did you attend last month. Now, these are quantity response questions, so we want to sort of work out sort of averages and minimums and maximums and totals and things. So we're going to turn this into a stats table, basically a statistics table. And there are a number of different table styles which you can play around with just to do with formatting. It doesn't affect the data. So this is a statistics table, so I'm going to make use of the chart style or table style called statistics table. Apply that one. Now we have got all our data sort of scrolling off the page into the car park somewhere, so it might actually look a little bit easier to read if it goes down the page rather than across the page. So if you remember, it's the analysis and break which says, are we talking about columns and rows? So what we can actually do, instead of just retyping it back to front, we can just transpose it, and that will just effectively reverse the analysis and break over. But if we just drop down the menu, you notice that there is actually a table style in there with the word transposed on, and this table style is just been designed to work with a table which has been transposed. And really the table, in terms of table styles, more than anything, it's just to do with which sort of grid lines are on display and things. So if I didn't choose a transposed table style, I'd probably end up with some grid lines going across each of these in the middle, which would be a bit sort of bit messy. Okay, I'm just going to save that one. Let's just call that one T stats. Let's move on to charts now. Now, the first thing to just say about charts is that really a chart is just a sort of a colourful table or a table in disguise. And it's built in very much the same way. You've still got your analysis and break, but the difference is you've got the style drop down and there's a much bigger list now. So I'm going to start off with just bar counts, and I'm going to stick with question 12 and apply that one. So nice simple chart, 4 different categories at the side, and we've got the different options there. Arguably it's quite hard to tell whether that is sort of 45, 46, 47. So if we go into modify, you'll see that there's also a style on there with labels on there. And that will literally just pop labels at the top. If I want percentages, we've got 2 in there called bar percent and bar percent labeled. But this is where we just need to be a little bit careful, because really as I said, a chart is just a table in the background sort of with some colours and disguise on it. The disguise is here. It's going to make it look like a colourful chart with some percents on. The actual table in the background is being calculated with counts. So it's really important, if we want the percentage calculation to take place, that we actually tick percents. And it's also important you only choose one or the other. So if I apply, we've got the percentages. And again, if I just go back into modify, you notice that again, as I just quickly scroll down, there's all our chart styles sort of have the word sort of counts and percents on them, and some of them also say the word transpose. So again, if you see a chart style with the word transposed on, generally it's telling you to tick the transpose box. It's not to say that you can't tick the transpose box anyway. And if you look at my chart at the moment, it's only got 4 different categories, but even with 4 different categories, I'm having to look over here, look at what the different colours are and try and remember what they are by the time I get back to here. So in this instance, actually, what transpose will do is switch around the look of this chart, and instead of having a legend at the side, the labels have now attached themselves to the bottom, so it makes it a lot easier to read. Let's have a look at some other options and variations. I'm going to take the transpose off just a second. So just going back to just the sort of the 4 different colours with the legend at the side. And then we're going to introduce a second question. So I'm going to come back into the break and I'm going to add in the age question. So again, if you can imagine the table in the background, we've now got columns of data for the different age groups. So we've got essentially one column for under 18s, a different column for 18 to 24. Obviously, we've got multiple columns within those main columns, but essentially this was a table. That's one column, that's another column, that's another column, etc. But again, when we're thinking about percentages, we just need to be aware of how is this percentage calculated. Now, appreciate this chart's got quite a lot of numbers on there and you probably haven't got time to add them all up in your head at the moment, but what we're looking at the moment is all the blue categories add up to 100%. So for the monthly, it adds up to 100%. For the quarterly, it adds up to 100%. Now, if we're interested in the fact that all the blue add up to 100%, we don't really want to have to look over here, there, and there, all the way up to the end. And likewise for the green, all the way to the end. So this is where if we go back into modify, and we can simply transpose it. So again, that's really swapping the analysis and break around. and you'll now see that actually all the blue bars have now gone into this first category. So that was all the blue bars, that was all the green bars initially. So the legend is now sort of reversed around, and we're now looking at all the data for the monthly together, all the data for the quarterly together, rather than having the monthly spread across the whole page. If, on the other hand, you did want to have your main sort of age groups down the bottom, if I take the transpose back off, if you did want to know, sort of have the under 18s there and the 18 to 24s there, you'd probably want all these categories to add up to 100%. So again, back into modify. At the moment, it's the percentages of question 12, the monthly, quarterly, weekly, that adds up. We now want percentages of the break, so the under 18s, the 18 to 24s, to add up to 100%. So we just got to, again, be aware of what this chart is showing. Yeah, now it's the under 18s that add up to 100%. Okay, let's take a look at, in fact, I'll just save that one. So I'm going to call that one C12, because it's chart based on question 12. And let's create another couple of ones. Look at a pie chart. So again, 3 different ones to choose from, with pie labelled outside. This list does look fairly horrendous to look at to begin with. It looks a little bit overwhelming, but actually it's really not as bad as you think it is, because there's actually only 18 different types of charts. It's just for every type of chart, there's generally a few slight variations to do with labelling more than anything else. Look at question 12 again. Remember, it says percents, so tick percents. Pie chart all adding up to 100%. We might want to introduce a second question. So if we look at question 21, my gender question. Now, in my window today, partly because I'm using Teams, so everything's a little bit smaller, but I've basically run out of space. So you haven't really got space for all the extra labels, because I've got quite a few pies going on there. So again, what I'm actually going to do is, rather than saying labelled outside, that's exactly the reason why we've given you a few variations. So got labelled inside. And also 21 was the gender question with the I prefer to identify in a different way. Didn't have any data in there, so again, we're going to get rid of any empty columns or rows. So you can see we've now haven't got the big labels on the outside, so it's all fitting on the page. Again, being a little bit careful, because it's actually the blue segments that all add up and the green segments that all add up. So again, backing into modify, and yeah, it should be actually each of the pies themselves, each of the age and the gender categories should add up to 100%. So it should be the break percents. Okay. But yeah, I always say that kind of everyone loves a good percent, but you just need to be really careful that you know how your percentage is being calculated. Okay. And really, my advice when it comes to charts are match up the tick boxes with the long name. So if it says transpose, tick transpose. If it says percents, tick percents. And if you're going to go with percents, which percents are you looking at? And then finally, even if it doesn't say transpose, occasionally your chart will look nicer if you do transpose it. Occasionally it won't. It really generally depends how many categories you got in the analysis versus how many categories you got in the break. Okay, just a couple of other charts just worth maybe mentioning. Let's have a look at perhaps a satisfaction type question. I've got question 7A to question 7D. And I'm going to look at a horizontal stacked bar percent transpose. So again, do what it says. Says percents, says transposed. and that will lay out again with the sort of scale of 1 to 5 with the sort of categories at the side. Likewise, we might go in and look at perhaps slightly different variation. I've got question 11A to 11G, which is a question of, can you rank these in order of importance, sort of 1 to 3. So, but what we can also do is start ordering this chart. So we can go to modify, and we can order it based on the different columns of data. So I can order it based on maybe column number 1. You can see that's put them in order of first, the greatest number of people that have chosen the first position. Now it does look like it's gone a little bit wrong here. It's actually because the data in the background is the ordering is actually based on the number of people, not the percentages, and there's actually more people, despite the percentages, there's more people who chose run face-to-face as their first. So it's just the sort of variation of how else they've chosen. Okay, just one more. If I look at one of our bigger questions, perhaps looking at question 16, do a bar percent labeled. Again, what we might want to do is just consider ordering your data. So first of all, again, it's all a little bit colourful at the moment because we've got so many categories, so it's quite a hard read. So we might transpose it. That's still going to be sort of quite messy to read though, because we've got so many categories. We're going to sort of be struggling for space. So not too bad today, but this is where you might consider making use of our horizontal versions. So horizontal bar percent label transposed, got everything ticked, and what I'm also going to do is order it top to bottom based on the data. Okay, and remember, every time we're saving these, it's saving the kind of it's saving the kind of structure of the table or chart. It's not actually saving the data. Every time you click on this table or chart, it will be using the very, very latest data. Okay, let's turn our attention to dealing with comment questions. So we've got either a list or a cloud. I'm going to start with a list. My general comment question is question number 9, but it's also potentially quite useful to look at a few other questions at the same time. So I've got question 9, which is my general comment question, question 20, which is the age question, and id.date is the date that the person started the survey. I click apply. So it's going to give me a little bit like a spreadsheet of data. I've got all my comments, all my age groups, all my dates. What we do have is a number of gaps in there because, of course, not everyone's going to give a comment. So I'm going to remove those comments, and I'm also going to sort these in order of sort of age. So if I go into modify, first of all, my filter is going to be Q9 OK. So that just means that they've answered question number 9, the main sort of comment question, and I'm going to order it based on column number 2. Try that one. Yeah, all the non-responses have disappeared, and it's now sorted in terms of the different age groups. Okay, and again, you'd save that as per normal, but I'm not going to worry about that today. And then just to sort of the other sort of quick attempt at dealing with your comment questions would be a word cloud. Now, a word cloud will take your general sentences, all your individual sentences, and break them up into separate words. And the bigger the word, the more frequently that word was. That's not question 14, it's question 9. Again, that's where having my list of variables would be useful. But yeah, the bigger the word, the more frequently that word was given. Now, this type of analysis is best used for sort of literal response questions, which are perhaps a bit more restricted in terms of their output. So, for example, you might have a question which is, what are the first 3 words that come to mind when you think about such and such? Because you can see you're more likely to get more meaningful words popping up then. Whereas in my example, you're going to get words popping up, but sometimes it's quite hard to tell in what sort of context they were mentioned. So yeah, lots of people have said about the facilities, but what did they say about the facilities and the atmosphere? And yeah, you've just got to bear in mind how actual useful is this in terms of just analysis when you're just looking at individual words as part of a big sentence. Okay, now just to finish off, just to remind you that you can share all this analysis with colleagues, clients and stakeholders, giving them the ability to self-serve and look at that data any sort of time of day or night. So just simply go back to the summary tab. We got the shares. So we can add a new user. Now that user will need an XMP account, so a Snap XMP account. If they don't already have a research account, as in like I've got a research account, I can create surveys, I can do analysis, I can start and stop the survey. So if they don't already have a researcher account, they can actually set themselves up with a free analyst account. Now again, I'm going to be giving you a link at the end of this where you can point people to go and create their own free accounts to set those up. And just to confirm, you can share this with someone that does have full researcher ability, so they do have full access to build tables and charts, but also they might have full access to start and stop surveys and create surveys and delete surveys. You don't necessarily want to share all that permissions with that user, so I might share this survey with Ted. Ted may well be a full user of Snap, but you don't want to give Ted full access to this particular survey, so I'm just going to share this with Ted as either an analyst or perhaps an analyst who can actually download the data. What I might want to do though is also restrict what actual data Ted can look at. So Ted might be one of my trainers, which was question 2, and let's pretend that Ted was my trainer number 3 in my list. So yeah, Ted can create himself a free account, or if he hasn't got one already, he would log in just like we log into Snap Online, and then Ted will be able to see any tables and charts that we've produced, any reports, but in this case the data would be only showing them for number 3. Whilst I might give Bob at Snap access to maybe all the data, so unrestricted data, and I might give Tony maybe full access to do everything, but just bear in mind that would include giving them access to stop, start, delete, anything they want in terms of the actual survey. Okay, so hopefully that's shown you just how easy it is to analyze your data within Snap XMP Online. The analysis capabilities of Snap really do extend far beyond what I've shown you today, particularly if you do have access to Snap XMP Desktop, where you can create your own bespoke reports, introducing smart reporting into your analysis as well. On screen now, there are a few QR codes. The one on the left will direct you to a webinar that we did a little while ago, which focuses on more about the sort of expressions which you can do when you're doing your filtering. So it actually covers the same filters that you might do for your routing, but yeah, the analysis expressions, so things like the Q2 equals 2, etc. So it takes you into a lot more sort of elaborate examples, which might be useful for some of your more extensive analysis that you might be doing. The middle QR code is the analysis account. So as I said, if you've got a colleague or client which perhaps doesn't have access to any Snap at all, they can set themselves up with a free account, and that would then allow them to look at your analysis, as I said, any time of day or night. Or perhaps if you've got users of Snap that are perhaps out on the street doing face-to-face interviewing using our offline interviewer app, they have an account, but what they don't have is the analyst permission. So again, they can click on the link within there and it will add that extra permission onto the permissions they have already. And then finally, if you have got 2 minutes, if you wouldn't mind taking a little while to fill out our feedback on today, your feedback would be very much appreciated. Thank you for joining me, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.